their businesses by keeping promises and making promises to individuals. And those aren't promises just to your clients. They're promises to your clients, to your staff, to your family, and most importantly, to yourself. And I think one of the things about looking at all of this, deciding to retire, or maybe you've had a change of circumstances where you need to either cut back or cease being in the business for right now, all of those are ways that challenge your ability to keep those promises. And so that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at what does that look like. You may also be looking to grow your agency by acquisition. And so you're going to need to know, number one, what that seller is going through, and also what the buyer, as yourself, would be involved in, and some of the things to consider. So we're going to dive into some of that today and see if we can take a look at this a little bit more than just a simple financial transaction, because it's certainly not. There's a lot that's involved in it. It's a very emotional and financial and life-changing kind of event, and so that's what we're going to take a look at. So I'm going to go ahead and over to the slides here. And keeping in mind too that this is a new beginning. It's a new beginning for you. It's a new beginning for your staff, for your clients, for your family. And so if you look at it as a new beginning, then it's a kind of a fun way of thinking about that. But there's definitely some items that a person has to take a look at. Now, first off, why would an individual be looking at any kind of a succession planning whatsoever? Some of the reasons you may be involved in. If you're an agency owner, maybe you want to grow your agency by acquiring other agency. There's always the organic growth. Obviously, inside of our organization, I was very involved and still am in the organic growth of our business through the sales of new products and things like that directly to the consumers and all of that that's involved with that. But in addition to your organic growth that you have at your agency, you may want to acquire other agencies and have kind of an infusion of new clients, new relationships, new centers of influence, and things like that. So acquisition is actually something that is very important for you to look at. It's also a reason why you want to stay very close to your competitors that are in your area, because those very competitors are the ones that you probably will be acquiring to grow your agency as time moves forward. And if you're an agency owner and you want to sell a portion of your agency or even an entire agency, you may want to just do a portion of it. Maybe you want to just cut back some and you want to just focus in on just a single product line. Maybe you want to just focus in on annuities or a product line along those lines, or maybe your P&C side of your agency, and you want to migrate away from the Medicare portion of your agency. That is definitely doable. We've also had situations where individuals had downline agents that were their Medicare agents, and then the agent left and they really did not know what to do with their Medicare business that they had. So if you're an agency owner, keep an eye on that. If you hear about somebody leaving an agency that is in your area, you may want to talk to that agency owner if they want to sell that portion of that agency to you. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. But you're going to need a plan of action regardless of what you're doing, whether you're buying or selling an agency. And the devil's always in the details anytime that you're looking at any of that. So here's some key things that you begin with. One is, what are the ethics and values of that agency that you are looking at purchasing, or at the buyer that's looking at buying your agency? Like we talked about before, you have made a lot of promises. And one of those promises is always to take care of, in a very ethical way, of all of your clients. And you want to make sure that whoever is buying your agency is going to continue that same way. So make sure that you're on the same wavelength. If for something tells you in your gut that it's just not right, listen to that, because you've tuned that over the years. So pay attention to how you feel about that individual that you're either buying that agency from or selling it to. Also, if you're buying an agency, if that person's way of doing business is vastly different than yours, you're going to have a lot of difficulty taking over those clients, because that client has probably purchased from that person because that person clicked with them. And if that person clicked with them and you are totally different from that, you're going to have trouble clicking with them. So you want to make sure that that matches up. And then knowing the history behind it, the goals that they've had and how they've met all of those. Really want to get to know that. And what is the goal of that agent that is potentially selling? You might want to make sure that you pay attention to that too, because if they're not fully retiring or leaving the business, and they're still going to be in the business in some way, there's a lot of things that you're going to have to address in the purchase agreement as far as non-compete and how you would handle clients who may cross over into product lines that they still work in, things like that. So make sure everything is laid out clearly. And then knowing their agency. One thing is that is always surprising me when I start working with agencies is that you make an easy assumption that their location or their clients are all located in a single area. But one of the things that you've probably found in your business, and they certainly will probably have done too, is the individuals they've talked to over the years, they have developed relationships with, and they're maybe in different parts of the country, certainly different parts of the state usually. So you're going to have a good idea of their footprint and things like that. How are they running their business? What's their client base like? What does that feel like? What carriers and lines of business are they actually in? And you may be very surprised by that. One of the quick things I might mention about this, and we'll talk about it a little bit more when we talk about the purchase agreements, but make sure that you look at not just active carriers, but also carriers that may have terminated contracts. Most agencies have an equal number almost of terminated contracts as they do active contracts, and sometimes those don't show up. So make sure that you're matching that income statement with the carriers that are represented that you potentially are purchasing, and that way no client gets left behind in the whole process. Then their marketing activities and certainly their financials. Does the buyer, for instance, have the ability to pay? Keep in mind that renewals generally by most lenders are not looked at as collateral. Some they do, but you're going to have to find that out. So you don't want to assume that. You don't want to assume that your renewals are something that new buyer can use as a collateral. So do they got the money? Do they have the ability to actually buy you out for a value that is a reasonable amount? And if you're thinking of financing things yourself on some of these acquisitions, my only caution to you is be very careful. If I've seen problems arise, it generally comes from trying to self-finance. There's always good intention when you start. Everything's rosy at the beginning, but later that can be very complicated, especially with family. So when it comes to family, be really, really careful with self-financing. It's a lot cleaner to have a third party come in and help settle the finances. Okay, so why would you sell your agency? What is your fuel? What is your motivator for potentially doing that? There's a lot of them. I mean, you can think about the new things that you could potentially do. Maybe you want to start a new business. Maybe you want to go to a different part of the country and start a new business. Maybe you want to just enjoy relaxing for a change. Maybe you're just sick and tired of doing certs and don't want to do AEP anymore. That seems to be the reason I hear from a lot of individuals. But you just enjoying your success. You've worked super, super hard for years and years to build something so that you can enjoy success. How are you going to get to the point where you can do that, to where you have the time to do it, that you're not tied down to particular things in your business? I see a tremendous number of agents who are really up in age that continue to work when they could be just really enjoying their life and enjoying some of the things that they have the capability of doing while they have the health and wellness to be able to do it. So let's talk a little bit about friction. If you want things to go smooth, you have to plan ahead for any kind of friction. Don't downplay or ignore these following items, because a lot of people do, and that would really impact a smooth transition. So what are some of the things that can be friction points? Are your financial records up to date? You're going to need income statements, commission statements, carrier contracts. There's a lot of things that you need to have put together in order to make sure that you're ready to actually sell if you're selling your agency. And if you're buying it, you're gonna expect the seller to be able to have and produce some of these items. Again, every single one of these situations I've run across where individuals thought that they had them and then they didn't. Carrier contracts, by the way, is one that a lot of times people think that they have ready access to, and then they go looking for them and they have trouble finding them. Then you also have the kind of this fear or thought in the back of your mind about the loss of your tax deductions. It's very true. You're used to functioning with your income, being able to reduce a lot of your taxable income by the deductions that you use. If you sell your business, you're not going to have those anymore. The next is your distribution of funds. So if somebody's going to buy that agency and they're going to pay you for that, hopefully they will. When they do, what's it going to do for you for a taxation? Are you going to have a windfall tax with it? Talk to your CPA. Find out the best way to have the buyer distribute the funds to you. It may very well be fine, to go ahead and receive them all in one lump sum. But I can tell you that most of the time, and again, I'll touch on this again in a little bit, but most of the time those funds at best are distributed at 80% initially, and then there's usually several months wait before that second 20% is paid. Usually that's done because of a retention, making sure the business stays on the books, make sure the smooth transition and things like that. But you do need to address your windfall taxation. And then preparing, if you're retiring, preparing for the loss of this residual income from your renewals. This is a particular area that I have seen a lot with family. Individuals will have a family member come in and take over their business, and that individual starts having to service all those clients, but they're not going to be getting the renewals for it unless you give them to them. And if you give them the renewals to be servicing all those clients, then you've given away your income flow. So just really think through this loss of this residual income, because that's definitely going to happen to you. Whoever buys that agency is buying your renewals. And so that residual income is going to go away. And so you want to make sure your purchase offer is big enough to offset that loss. And then talking about a purchase offer, I always recommend professional valuations. Have an outside company come in and value that business. It's like selling your home. You would have your home appraised when you go to sell it, so that you know exactly what fair market value is for your home. And that buyer is going to need that, because they're going to want to know that they're paying appropriate price for it. This is not an area to leave to happenstance or guesswork. Involve a professional actuaries to actually value that business. And then another is to having all parties involved sign a non-disclosure agreement. I don't care how well you know someone, you want to make sure that you have legal documentation in place throughout this entire process. And a non-disclosure agreement is extremely important so that you can just relax with it, because full transparency is vital. It's vital to have full transparency so that everybody knows what they're selling, everybody knows what they're getting. So that's that NDA can play an important role, and also include who you want to actually know with that NDA. You don't want somebody calling your office and just casually bringing up the fact that they may be buying your agency to a staff member who has no idea. So again, NDAs provide, non-disclosure agreements provide a nice way to have full transparency. And then looking at the process of the appraisal and evaluation, they're going to be looking at income, of course, but they're also going to be looking at policy by policy. Very seldom is a purchase made with just an income. I had an agent tell me the other day, he said, well, I make X number of dollars, just tell me what you think it's worth. Well, that's fine, except it's not a way that you can actually value the business. You have to look at those policies individually, each one of them, because each one is will have different rules under the carrier contract, different time periods for renewals. The person may be of different age, different types of products, and even the states. I know, like for instance, in Missouri, there's always concern when individuals are doing valuations on Medicare supplements in Missouri because of Missouri anniversary. So I mean, you're seeing a lot of those kind of things. So pay attention to your state laws even whenever you're doing that. And if you have have a case that maybe you see a low on the appraisal, then say, hey, listen, this is the circumstance. It may look like this, but this is actually what the circumstance is. Then the next is just your current debt. Uh, a lot of times people are really anxious about ever selling, and they never end up selling because they have these fears in the back of their mind about debt. And sometimes there's debt that the agent may have that nobody else knows about. Maybe your spouse doesn't know about it, or people that you work with. It's going to come out, so you might as well have those discussions ahead of time if you're going to be doing a selling or buying process. So let people know about things early. There's no reason to bury them or downplay them. Get them out on the table, and everybody can deal with them. Tax debt is also something very common, of course, with agents. That may or may not be involved in the purchase or sale of an agency, but if it is, make sure that it's well known. Debit balance with carriers, by the way, is considered debt or owing a carrier money. So if somebody says, do you owe any carriers money? And you take advancing, then yes, you do. You don't want to get broadsided by that, because let's just say the purchase price is $100,000 and you've had $30,000 of that advanced through commissions. They're going to take that off of that purchase price. So if you do have debit balances, then you might want to start thinking about clearing those up, paying those back to the carrier, or starting to, if you're going to transition later, get on as earned. Most of you are probably on as earned, but if you're not and you want to consider selling your agency in the future, you might want to move your contracts over to as earned versus advancing. That's one of the moves that you can make as you're planning for acquisition. Now let's take a look at some of the things that you might be thinking about with clients. One of the first ones on the screen there is promises made to clients to always be there for them. You know, one of the interesting things is you feel like by selling sometimes that you're doing the opposite of that you're not going to take care of them. You're leaving them, if you will. But the reality is, if you're selling, especially to an organization, you're setting the stage for that person to be taken care of from then on. So it's not a negative thing. It's a positive thing. This is you actually making sure that they are taken care of. And so when you're letting your clients know what you're doing eventually, make sure that they understand that hey, listen, this is so that, you know, when you're 85 and I'm you know, too old to take care of you anymore, that there's always going to be somebody there. And so that's what I'm setting the stage for. And you can see on the screen, and by the way, all of these slides will be available to you after this presentation, so you can get a copy of all of them, so you can kind of go through some of these just for thought triggers. Another one on there is, do your clients know where you live, your cell number, and then see them in town, see them in Walmart. You know, this is one of the reasons why notification and communication about this transition is extremely important to every single one of your clients. Don't leave anybody behind. You don't want to sell your agency and then have this fear in the back of your mind that you're going to run into somebody. Make sure that you've communicated it, that they get that message, that you're looking out for them, that you've set the stage for their future, and that gives you peace of mind too. You don't want to feel like you're leaving people high and dry. Like I said, you made all these promises. I did it too. I had an agency for 30 years and I sold it. I mean, I get it. You want to make sure that those people understand that you're living up to what you've told them. It wasn't just empty words. And this is a way that you're trying to help do that. Or maybe you have clients that you haven't kept up with. You know, maybe you have clients you just haven't seen in forever. That's okay. That's okay. Any realistic buyer understands that happens, and they're probably going to start reaching out to people that haven't been reached out to in a while. Don't beat yourself up on some of this stuff. You've been working hard. You've been taking care of business, and everybody has individuals maybe that they haven't reached out to in a while. So don't let that be in the back of your mind and cause a lot of fear. The last one I want to touch on this screen is, are your clients' records complete and organized? This is extremely important if you're buying or selling an agency. Almost every agent that I talk to does not know how many clients they actually have. That doesn't seem possible, but it is definitely true. It is very, very important for you to have your clients, at least get them on an Excel spreadsheet, so that you can see exactly who you have if you have all paper files. But start preparing them. Start looking at your clients. Start going through, are there deceased clients still in your paper files, or are there individuals who dropped their coverage a while back that aren't showing up on commission statements anymore? Clean up your files, and then if you can, move them into a CRM. You're going to have to migrate to the CRM of the person that's buying it, but it's a lot easier to migrate from CRM to CRM than it is from complete paper files to an automated system. So make sure that when you're talking to somebody about buying their agency, or if you're thinking about selling it, ask them, tell me a little bit about your client files. How do you keep them? How are they kept up to speed? The next is your staff. This is something that you want to make sure inside your purchase agreement that you carefully outline your desires for what will happen with your staff. This is another group that you've made promises to. They've worked beside you. Many of them are responsible for a big portion of your agency, and they might also be family members, which can kind of complicate situations a little bit if you don't carefully outline in those purchase agreements what will happen with them. Make sure that anything is addressed. If you've made some promises to those people that you're going to give them certain raises, or maybe that they're going to have this particular item come up in their future, or promotion or whatever, make sure that the buyer knows that and that it's openly addressed. You have a working, operating, functional machine, and the last thing you want to do is break it. If you're buying it, you don't want it broken. And if you're selling it, you don't want it to break for the new buyer. And so keeping your staff involved all the way through the whole process is really, really, really important. But a lot of these things that I'm pointing out here are reasons that people never, ever sell. And they're not insurmountable. They're not something that should stop you from taking advantage of the opportunities you have to enjoy your success. Then taking a look at your property. Do you own the building that you're in? Or maybe you work out of your home. But if you own the business that you're in, are you going to sell it to this new buyer? Are you going to start leasing it to them? Are they going to need to change location? Are you just going to put it out on the market? All of these impact things, because that buyer may very well want to keep all this continuity as possible. And so they may want to talk to you about purchasing your business, but maybe leasing it may be a smart thing for you. It may create a new income stream for you upon retirement. So there's a lot of different advantages tax-wise and things like that to make particular moves with that, but definitely consider the property, including the office equipment. All those desks, all the filing cabinets, the phones, the pencil cups, you name it. Everything needs to be present and accounted for, all the way down to whatever's hanging on the walls, to make sure that all of those little details. This is where, when you finally get down to the nuts and bolts of getting this whole process done, some of these things can throw a real monkey wrench in it. You feel like your property, maybe that desk that you have in there, you think is worth, $2,000, and the buyer thinks it's worth 20. Make sure you talk about those things ahead of time, so that there's not any surprises. And then anything that's outside of the offices, of course, any of the signs, billboards, maybe you have lease agreements on billboards, or rental agreements on those, or maybe you even own those that you're going to rent back to the buyer. Make sure you just don't leave out any of the details. Think all the way through every little aspect. If you've been in the business for a long time, there's a lot more little aspects involved, especially when you start thinking about it. You just haven't thought about them in a while. So those are things to think about. So you're in sales. You know the importance of a person's emotions and how they're emotionally impacted by things. These are emotional items, and they are real. Do not ignore them. They are a huge stopping point for a lot of individuals in moving forward. And even if whether you're a buyer or a seller, think about the emotional impact of it all. Because some of us were raised that if we're not working, and we're not hard workers, then we're worthless. And that is not true. However, it may be ingrained in the back of your mind, and you may view retirement as not working and as a weakness. Make sure you address these things mentally. Think about them. Or maybe you think your business just doesn't live up to expectations. Maybe you've, for a long time, again, this is kind of a salesman thing, but maybe you've told everybody that you had 500 clients when you have 300 or whatever. I mean, you may have exaggerated some of this stuff. That's okay. That's okay. It's just get down to the brass tacks with it all. Figure out what you have, figure out what it's worth, be fair about it, be transparent about it, and cross that bridge. Just don't beat yourself up on this kind of stuff, because again, if you're selling to somebody who's a good buyer, then they're going to be in the business too. They're going to understand all of this stuff. And then also part of selling is this addiction that we get to this sale. Are you okay with not having that adrenaline injection all the time, or maybe not feeling like you're an advisor, or so people can come to you for answers all the time and things like that? You know, make sure that you've kind of thought through all this stuff. Don't let it eat away at you or ignore it like it's not going to be a reality. Think about it up front. Make sure that you're okay with that emotionally, and then you can enjoy this whole transition, because again, this is an opportunity for a new beginning. You don't want it to let some of those emotional things hold you back down. Another thing is maybe hoping that the children or family would inherit and run the business, and that happens sometimes. In fact, some of the best agencies we know are generational businesses, and that's great, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes the kids just don't want to run it, or the other family members that you thought for sure would be super excited about the insurance business all of a sudden say, no, it's just really not for me. So these are things that a person has to go through. Here's some other fears that you might want to address. Often the buyers are not local. And if they're not local, if you're a seller, you need to teach that buyer about your market. Talk to them, let them know. Hey, listen, this is a small town that I live in. This is how people feel in this area. This is how they like to see people dressed. This is how they like to hear people talk to them. Let them know exactly what your buyers or your clients are like, so that they can feel that, and you can be comfortable that they know it as well. If you are afraid that you don't understand all the legal documents that are going to be presented to you, get a third party involved, somebody just that you trust to review the documents. It may be an attorney, but it also may just be somebody that you know is really good in business, and have somebody else take a look at them and just say, hey, listen, I'm getting ready to sign this. I'm getting ready to sell my agency confidentially. Can you take a look at this and see what you think? Maybe they see something that you don't, or that needs to be included. Usually that's not a problem. It's just clearing the air. So that can put that to bed for you too. And then again, just the lifestyle. Get ready for your new lifestyle, and let people in the area know what you're doing. It's not just clients that you want to talk to. These referral bases. Go out to the pharmacy. If you've been getting referrals from the pharmacy forever, go to them and just say, hey, listen, I just want you to know I'm retiring. From now on, it's going to be Jim that's going to be taking care of you. Jim's a super nice individual, and this is what you can kind of expect with him. Keep everybody in the loop. Okay, so when you come down to actually starting on some of the paperwork, these are some of the things that are going to be involved. The appraisal or the valuation, the buyer is going to need income statements, so they can see obviously what kind of income that you're seeing, plus it gives them an ability to kind of double check things with that. They're going to want to look at commission statements, but here's a point to keep in mind. Not all clients are going to show up on your most current commission statements. You may have sold quarterlies or semi-annuals or annuals, or you may even have clients that have a policy with you, but you're not getting paid on them anymore. That client relationship is still valuable. So commission statements are an important part, but don't just think that the most recent commission statements are going to be sufficient. Make sure you're showing what your entire block of business is. Then all your financial statements and your tax statements, get those in order so that they're ready for that. And then what does your agency structure look like? Do you have agents on that are LOA agents or license only agents that you're paying directly, or maybe their own salary? Or do you have sub-agent agreements? And if you do, what do those contracts look like? And if you're paying the agent, what kind of split do you have? And does that need to change or not change, or is that part of the promises that you've made to that individual agent that's working for you? Again, just things to think about. You no doubt have already thought of these things, but still at the same time, they're just reminders. And then you submit that data to the appraisal company. They come back then with a purchase offer that's prepared by that appraisal company to present to you for review. If you agree to that purchase offer, then you'll progress to the purchase agreement. And that agreement can include all the things that we've been talking about. So upon purchase, you're going to agree upon all these different financials and the procedural aspects of the transaction, what it's going to look like, how are you going to notify clients, etc. All of those need to be included. Then a game plan needs to be developed for any lines that you're not selling. Just because you're not selling it doesn't mean it's not going to impact it. If you have P&C business and health insurance business, there's a 90% chance that your P&C clients are also your health clients, and your health clients are also your P&C clients. So what if one of those individuals asked for a product that is in the same product line as you sold to this buyer? What are you going to do with that? Have those conversations. Don't make assumptions. This is not a place to make assumptions about what will happen. And you might also want to set up a referral agreement. In fact, referral agreements are one of my favorite ways of addressing that particular situation. That way, there's still money that's involved and still a way to make money off of individuals when you run into them at this grocery store and they say that their aunt wants to buy a Medicare supplement. You can refer that over to that new buyer and have a referral agreement where you get paid for that. And CMS, by the way, allows up to $25 for PDPs and up to $100 for Medicare Advantage as referral fees to individuals. So there's still ways of doing it even with those federally regulated plans. Then the appraisal company is going to create a purchase agreement, or someone will, and most of the time it's the appraisal company, will draft the purchase agreement that outlines all these details. You want to make sure they're all in there. After you've signed the purchase agreement, then they're going to present commission assignments or succession agreements like UHC has. And they're created with each carrier. So those have to be signed and sent into the carrier. The carrier then is going to process that. Every carrier is different. Some of them can take several weeks to process those. And so they're going to process those and come back to you, and then those commissions are going to be assigned. So you're going to have some of the carriers that have processed before others and things like that. So there's going to have to be a level of trust there, because you've told this buyer who your clients are, you've given them all your financials, you've signed over the purchase agreement, you've probably signed a purchase agreement with them as well, and now you're assigning all these commissions to them, and they probably haven't paid you anything yet, because they don't want to pay anything until the commission assignments all get done, or at least the majority of them. And so that's a time that's usually causes a little bit of angst, but understand that's just a normal part of all of this. Those commission assignments have to take place, and then once all the funds are those completed, then the funds for the purchase can be released by to the seller. And like I said before, normally it's an 80%, and they hold back 20%, sometimes 6 months, sometimes I've seen up to 18 months, or sometimes even longer, depending on the individuals that's buying it, to make sure that that business stays on the books and that this transition is smooth. So then the transition, after that happens, then you start moving all this client data over. It's got to be all converted into the new operating systems of the new owner. And if you're buying an agency, think through this. You're going to have to commit staff to that, especially if they have 500 clients and they're all paper files. It's going to take a little bit for you to enter them into your system. So kind of be prepared for that. And then moving over all office procedures. You got two households here, kind of, and everybody has a different way of doing business. So making sure that those start to mesh and go together, then getting all the leases and everything in place, converting all the HR responsibilities over, and then all the sub agents and their activities and managing those new agents. All of these items need to be considered for a smooth transition. Then this is the notification of the purchase. You want to make sure that absolutely everybody is on the right page. Are you going to keep the same name of the agency? You're going to change it? If so, when and how are you going to make sure that the whole community knows that, and that everything goes smooth with all of the clients and staff and everybody that's involved. So here's a saying that I think it's important to remember. I always think of this whenever I'm thinking about any succession planning, is that every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. You started your career, your business, to build it for something special. You have committed yourself to your clients. You've committed yourself to these promises. You've committed it for your family. Your family trusts that you're going to make good decisions. But this is a new beginning for you. And it's maybe coming from something you started before, but it's definitely a new horizon for you to enjoy and to take advantage of. So here's my contact information. If you want to have copies of these slides, or if you want to schedule time to have some further discussion, that's my contact information. So I'll leave that up there and then hand it back over to you.
Awesome. Let's see. There we go. There goes it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. You ran through basically everything. I had a bunch of questions, then you'd answer it and I'd scratch it out and write down another one. So awesome. Okay. Now we're going to move into our Q&A portion. Please feel free to put any question in there. I do just want to say, going into this Q&A portion, I won't be mentioning names. Everything will be anonymous, just for confidentiality and just assurance that you can ask any question. I'm the only person that can see the questions, and I even have your names hid just in case I slip up or something. So ask away, ask any questions. We do have a couple here, and I also have a couple of my own as well. Someone is asking, is there a website that shows insurance agencies for sale in a given area or zip codes?
There are services out there. It's like just about any kind of real estate. I have seen those. I personally don't utilize them because I have found that centers of influence are so much better, just to contact individuals that that you want to purchase those, because a lot of times those listings, nobody local wanted to purchase them for some reason. And so they put them out on those listings sites to be able to do that. So that may or may not be a good thing, but yes, there's absolutely sites out there. I don't know any of them off the top of my head to name. I can look up a few of them for you if you need them, though. Just reach out to me and I'll do some research on that for you.
Perfect. Then we have another question. Do you buy or sell for a period of years or just your current?
Just make sure I understand that question. Are you saying that are you buying? Well, I guess I don't understand the question. I apologize.
I'm assuming, go ahead and whoever asked the question, go ahead and clarify for us, but I'm assuming that they're asking, would you buy like a block of business from a certain set of years, or do you have to buy the entire book of business? Go ahead and let us know if that's what we're asking about. I think that's what it is.
Okay, well, if that's the case, it is difficult to do that. Now, it is very common to purchase just a carrier, or just a set of carriers. Some carriers are more difficult to work with, and so some individuals just don't bother selling those. Again, it depends on what the buyer intends to do with that business and whether or not that person is actually fully retiring. Just remember that if you hang on to business and you're still going to be active, then you're still going to have to keep everything current, all of your certifications, all of your licensing, everything current in order to keep even a few pieces of business on the books. So it kind of depends on what your goals are with that. But again, every purchase is completely different. There is no cookie cutter on it.
Okay, let's see. I never established as an agency, so my contracts are in my name as an individual. Can senior marketing specialists help me with transitioning the contracts, which I have with them?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. And the answer is an absolutely yes. We do that all of the time. In fact, there's a great white paper that Matt Beach created that is on transitioning from a sole proprietor to a corporation and choosing which corporation, what type of corporation to incorporate into. But yes, that's definitely something that we can help you a lot with. It's very, very common that we work with that.
Awesome. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Let me pull this out a little bit. Can we get access to the white paper? Yes, actually, I might be able to throw that in the follow-up email, or also you can call senior marketing specialists and we're happy to hand that over to you, email that over to you, and continue the conversation if you would like. Um,
And I put that back up on the screen too because there are on the website, on SMS's website, there is an area for acquisition pathways where some of this information can be gathered from as well. But yeah, we definitely want to make sure you have plenty of information so that you can make good decisions with it. It helps. It helps, by the way, to if you're really serious about doing some things. Let's have a 30-minute conversation. You might be surprised at what is available to you.
Perfect. Dan, I have a couple of questions of my own. In the meantime, go ahead and feel free to put your own questions in there. If not, we'll wrap it up after my questions here. But you did mention that one of the most popular reasons that you see people wanting to have this conversation with you about AP and kind of moving out of the business is because they don't want to deal with certs anymore. They kind of want to be done with AEP and the hustle and bustle of that. What are some of the other most popular reasons you see people wanting to contact you about leaving the senior market?
Well, I think one of them is exploring other markets. Sometimes agents want to just focus on annuities or focus on a different line of business that they have. I've had other situations where health is a big factor. Maybe something's happened where either to yourself or a spouse, to where there's been a transition in health, and you need to make sure that you take care of that, and you have to focus your attention on that. That's another big reason that I see individuals doing it. Also, the ability really just to truly take advantage of the health that they have, so that they can still go and do some of the things that are on their bucket list. If they want to travel and things like that, it's very hard to do that if you're kind of strapped down, if you will, to a client base that you have to be there during AEP and you have to be there, at different times. So individuals do it a lot of times for freedom.
Awesome. Okay, let's see. You kind of went through the whole process of what it looks like after you start the conversation and everything like that. But I'm wondering, so if someone is just curious, really more than ready to move on, or really get into like the depths of the transitioning process, what does the initial first call, first conversation with you or Matt Beach about AP, if someone is just curious, but they don't want to commit to anything?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's where most people are going to go into the whole circumstance. I mean, because you have to kind of check it out. This may very well not be. In fact, there's a lot of times I have conversations, and I will advise, this just is not the right thing for you to even be thinking about. Um, Sometimes that's in buying them too, by the way, buying agencies. Maybe an agency just not ready for that. But what we'll do is just talk about your situation. Like I said, everything is so unique. It's very important to get to know exactly what your goals are and your agency structure looks like and your client base looks like and what your goals are. We also have about 11-page questionnaire that I always send out to agents that will outline a lot of the different things that we would be considering if we're going to be involved in actually purchasing. And we have over 40 that we're involved in right now, that we're involved in purchasing, like actively at this time, in addition to the other ones that we purchased. But that questionnaire maybe will be something that you might enjoy having and will trigger some thought. So that's definitely part of that first conversation.
Perfect. We do have another question here. I have heard through the years that the purchase price could be a factor of annual commissions or a factor of profits. What do you think about that? Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, I do. I think that when you're looking at purchase price, everybody's going to be looking at it different. If somebody is buying just your renewals and they don't really care, it's just I think David referred to it the other day as a melting ice cube. If that's all they're worried about is just buying this renewals and just seeing what stays on the books, their only concern is the finances. That's what they're going to look at, period. And so they're going to look at what your income is off of those policies and the projected how long they're going to stay on the books. If they're buying relationships, then they're going to understand that Medicare supplements are going to move to different carriers, that Medicare Advantage is probably going to move to different carriers, and the lines of business are going to stay in place, but the carriers are going to change, and so a lot of those kind of things happen, and so it really kind of depends on what the buyer has in mind when they're appraising it, whether or not they're going to look heavier at the income side or heavier at the commission side. I would just caution that all of you that are on this call are actively doing business, and so this is a kind of a moving train. So one thing I didn't mention earlier that I think is important is that there's going to be a time lapse between the valuation and the signed purchase agreement, and that time lapse you're going to write business in the interim, and so that there's got to be a true up before final payment is made to make sure that any policies are accounted for. And normally those are looked at by, again, what type of product was written, how old that individual is, what carrier it was with, etc. And so it's when you're doing valuations, do your best to make sure that they're looking at policy by policy, not just your income statement. If they're looking at just your income statement, they're probably not in the least bit concerned about the relationships part of it. They're probably just looking at trying to buy your renewals.
Awesome. Okay. I have just a couple more questions here for you, and then we'll wrap it up unless we get any more questions. Another question that I have is, you say that, every situation is completely unique. There really is no cookie cutter or anything like that. But I'm curious to see if you're seeing like an average time it's taking from start to finish. Maybe just asking for the people who are wondering, how much time is this going to take? Am I ready to commit to that right now because of the time and everything like that? So yeah, I guess what I'm asking in all that fluff is, are you seeing an average time from start to finish of how long this process normally takes?
Yeah, it's probably normally going to take 2 or 3 months in order for it to move from all the way through that whole process. It depends on how prepared you are for it. If you've prepared your agency with your client files and with your commission statements and with all your finances in order and everything else, if you've done all that, then it's going to be pretty easy for you to be able to make that and streamline that a little bit more. And then you also have obviously the commission assignments that have to be figured in that are going to not up to you, it's up to the carrier. Some of those can take 3 or 4 weeks. Obviously, this time of year is busier for a lot of the companies that do the valuations, but this is the time of year that you want to try to make a move. You don't want to necessarily do this if you have Medicare Advantage and PDP products right before AEP. So you want to make sure that this time of year you take full advantage of it. This is the time of year to try to make a move. It's a lot easier. It can still be done later in the year, but it's a lot easier. And a lot of the valuation companies will not try to value policies during AEP for MA or MedSup, just simply because it can move during that Medicare enrollment period. So time is of essence. But I would say 2 or 3 months is normal.
Perfect. Okay, I have one more question for you and then we'll get out of here. I love that you mention the emotional part of owning an agency and letting it go. I mean, truly building an agency, building a business, it becomes part of your life. It becomes ingrained in you. It's like a child. So that can be so hard to move on, especially, after you've had years and years and years into that. So I just kind of want to leave us. I know that you mentioned some of this, but maybe in like one or two sentences, what would you say to someone who knows that this is probably the best move for them, for their book of business, and just in general, but they're having a really hard time letting go of this emotional connection that they have to this business?
Yeah, keep in mind, I did it myself. I sit with clients face to face for 30 years and then stopped sitting face to face with them, sold my agency, and started working with senior marketing specialists. That was a huge transition for me, and it took me a while. I would say don't put pressure on yourself thinking that you're not going to have a bit of a grieving process, if you will, with it, because it takes an adjustment. You're used to sitting in front of people, helping them solve problems, being that advisor, people turning to you for that, and then coming up with solutions like a doctor would diagnosing patients. I would just say that in the long run, though, what is the very best for you, your family, your staff, and those clients? Is it better for you to hang on till the bitter end, you know, or maybe be trying to take care of them whenever you don't have the health to be able to do it? Or is it better to put them in the hands of somebody that you vetted and you trust, that can keep those promises for you from that point forward? It's going to take a little bit of humility in order to be able to make it a successful transition.
Yeah, awesome. And I know that with you and Matt Beach and Amy and the whole AP team, they're in good hands, even emotionally, going through this process. So I will take one more question here. The last question we have is, would it be beneficial for the outgoing agencies to stay on with the buying agency for a period of time? It's a really good question.
Yes, very often that is true. You want to make that transition until all the clients have been notified and they all have a good comfort level. Or if you bump up against AEP, that new agent may not be prepared to handle all of your clients yet. They may need you to still see some of those clients and still help them to go through that period of time. So again, it's going to be a very individual thing, but very often it's helpful for that person to be involved heavily in that transition, at very least until all the clients have a really nice comfort level with the new relationship.
Awesome. All righty. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for coming on here and talking about this new division. This is so big for us, and we're very excited to be able to help out our clients get into the agency or get into the industry, help them through the agency, and now we're able to help them transition out of the agency, which is huge. So thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for the question and interactions. If you have any more questions after this that come up, please feel free to call 800-689-280. 2800, that is Senior Marketing Specialist. Then, of course, you can email Dan directly to that email right there. Feel free to call us anytime. We'll hook you up with Matt Beach and start that conversation. But yes, thank you so much for joining us today, and happy St. Patrick's Day, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.